"Why are you sleeping in the basement, Dad?" My son's voice cracked as he stood at the bottom of those cold concrete stairs. I was lying on a thin mattress in the corner, shivering under a blanket that smelled like mildew and forgotten years. My hip ached from the damp, my stomach growled from hunger, and my heart, well, my heart had been broken so many times in the past 4 months that I wondered if it still worked at all. I looked up at my son through eyes that had grown used to the darkness. I opened my mouth to speak, to explain, to tell him everything. But before I could say a word, I heard footsteps above us. Heavy footsteps, confident footsteps. And then my son-in-law's voice echoed down the stairwell. "Well, well, look who decided to show up." Kevin's tone dripped with that familiar contempt I had come to know so well. "Your father's perfectly fine down there, Marcus. He prefers it." "Don't you, Harold?" My son turned slowly. I watched his shoulders tense. I watched his hands curl into fists, and I knew, in that moment, that everything was about to change. But I should start from the beginning, because 4 months ago, I was a different man, living a different life. And I need you to understand how I ended up in that basement, hungry and bruised, before you can understand what happened next. My name is Harold Mitchell. I'm 68 years old, and I worked for 34 years as a project manager for a construction company in Calgary. I raised 2 children with my wife, Patricia. God rest her soul. She passed 3 years ago from pancreatic cancer, and I don't think I've ever fully recovered. Some losses you carry forever, like stones in your pockets that weigh you down with every step. After Patricia died, I stayed in our house for a while. The same house where we'd raised our kids, where we'd celebrated birthdays and Christmases, where we'd grown old together. But the house felt empty without her. Every room held memories that cut like glass. So when my pension kicked in fully, I decided to sell the house and move into a nice apartment downtown. Fresh start, I told myself. Patricia would have wanted me to keep living. I had a good pension. $6,200 a month. 34 years of hard work had earned me that. Plus, I had the money from selling the house, nearly $600,000 after the mortgage was paid off. I was comfortable. More than comfortable. I was set for the rest of my life. My daughter, Emily, and her husband, Kevin, lived in Edmonton. They'd been married for 12 years. And I'll admit I never quite warmed to Kevin. There was something about him, a slickness, a way of calculating every conversation like he was keeping score. But Emily loved him, and that was enough for me. Parents learn to accept the choices their children make, even when those choices keep us up at night. My son Marcus lived in Vancouver. He worked in software development, something I never quite understood but was proud of nonetheless. He called every Sunday, visited when he could, sent flowers on Patricia's birthday, even after she was gone. Marcus was the kind of son every father hopes for. The trouble started last spring. I was walking to the grocery store, just a few blocks from my apartment, when I slipped on a patch of ice that hadn't melted yet. Calgary springs can be cruel that way. I fell hard, broke my hip, and spent 6 weeks in the hospital, followed by another 8 weeks in rehabilitation. The bills weren't the problem. Thank God for our healthcare system. But living alone became difficult. I couldn't manage the stairs to my apartment. I couldn't stand long enough to cook. I couldn't do much of anything, really, and the thought of spending months alone in that apartment with a walker terrified me. That's when Emily called with her offer. "Dad," she said, her voice full of concern that I now know was rehearsed, "why don't you come stay with us? Just until you're back on your feet. Kevin and I have plenty of room. We'd love to have you." I hesitated. Edmonton was a 3-hour drive from everything I knew. My friends, my doctors, my routine. But Emily was persuasive. She always had been, even as a little girl. She knew exactly which words to use, which emotions to play on. "We'll take care of everything," she promised. "You won't have to worry about a thing." I should have called Marcus first. I should have asked more questions. I should have listened to that small voice in the back of my mind that whispered something wasn't right. But I was tired and scared and lonely, and my daughter was offering me a lifeline, so I said yes. Kevin drove down to Calgary to help me move. He was charming that day, almost aggressively so. He carried my boxes, made jokes, stopped at Tim Hortons to buy me coffee and a donut. Looking back, I realize he was auditioning for a role. The loving son-in-law, the caring family man. He played it perfectly. Their house in Edmonton was nice. A 2-story in a quiet neighborhood, with a big backyard and a finished basement. Emily had prepared a room for me on the main floor, right next to the bathroom. It had a new bed, fresh sheets, even flowers on the nightstand. "See, Dad?" Emily said, beaming. "I told you we'd take care of you." For the first few weeks, they did. Emily cooked meals. Kevin helped me with my physiotherapy exercises. We ate dinner together, watched hockey games, almost like a real family. I started to feel guilty for ever doubting them. But then the conversation started. It was Kevin who brought it up first, casually, over breakfast one morning. "Harold," he said, buttering his toast without looking at me, "have you thought about what happens if something goes wrong? I mean, you're getting older. What if you have another fall? What if you need to make decisions, and you can't?" I didn't understand what he was getting at. "I have a will," I said. "Everything's sorted." Kevin shook his head. "I'm not talking about after you're gone. I'm talking about now. What if you're in the hospital, unconscious? Who makes decisions for you? Who pays your bills? Who handles your finances?" Emily jumped in then, right on cue. I realize now they had rehearsed this. "Dad, we just want to protect you. What if something happens and we can't access your accounts to pay for your care? What if there are medical decisions that need to be made? We should have power of attorney, just in case." I didn't want to do it. Something in my gut told me it was wrong, but Emily looked so concerned, so genuinely worried about my well-being, and Kevin made it sound so reasonable. "It doesn't mean you lose control, Harold," he explained. "You're still in charge of everything. We would only step in if you couldn't make decisions yourself. It's just a safety net." I asked if I could think about it. They said, of course, take all the time you need. But over the next few days, they brought it up again and again, always with concern, always with love, always with that gentle pressure that wore me down like water on stone. Finally, I agreed. Kevin had the papers ready within hours. I should have noticed that. I should have wondered why he had legal documents prepared so quickly. But I was tired, and my hip hurt, and I just wanted them to stop asking. I signed the power of attorney on a Tuesday afternoon in late May. Kevin watched me sign each page, and I remember the look on his face, satisfied, hungry, like a predator who had finally caught his prey. The changes started small. Kevin began picking up my mail before I could get to it. "Just trying to save you the trouble," he said. Then he offered to help me manage my bank accounts online. "You shouldn't have to worry about all those passwords, Harold. Let me handle it." Within 2 weeks, my pension was being deposited into a joint account that Kevin had set up. "For easier management," he explained. "This way, we can pay for your expenses directly." I protested, but he had an answer for everything. And technically, legally, he now had the authority to do it. Then my apartment in Calgary needed attention. The lease was coming up for renewal, and Kevin suggested I let it go. "You're here with us now," he said. "Why pay rent on a place you're not using? That's just throwing money away." I didn't want to give up my apartment. It was my safety net, my escape route if things went wrong. But Kevin had already talked to the building manager, had already arranged everything. He presented it to me like a gift, a problem he had solved on my behalf. "The apartment's gone, Dad," Emily said cheerfully. "One less thing for you to worry about." I didn't realize until later that Kevin had pocketed the security deposit. $3,000 that was supposed to come back to me, gone. The room on the main floor was the next to go. One evening in July, Kevin announced that his mother was coming to stay for a few weeks. She had health issues, he said, and needed a room on the main floor, close to the bathroom. "You understand, Harold," he said. "It's only temporary. You can stay in the basement. We fixed it up nice." The basement was not fixed up nice. It was a concrete box with one small window, barely any heat, and a thin mattress on a metal frame. There was a bathroom down there, but the shower was cold more often than it was warm. The ceiling was low, and I had to duck through doorways. For a man recovering from a broken hip, navigating those steep stairs twice a day was agony. Kevin's mother never came. After a week, I asked Emily about it. She looked away, mumbled something about plans changing, and never mentioned it again. My old room was converted into Kevin's home office. That's when the real abuse began. My meals became smaller, leftovers from their dinner, cold by the time they brought them down. Sometimes they forgot entirely, and I would lie awake with my stomach cramping from hunger. When I complained, Kevin told me I was being ungrateful. "We took you in, Harold," he said, his voice cold. "We're feeding you, housing you. Most people would say thank you." I started to feel like a burden, like I was imposing on their lives simply by existing. I know now that this was intentional. Kevin was breaking me down, piece by piece, making me feel small and worthless so I wouldn't fight back. The phone calls to Marcus became difficult. My cell phone needed charging, and Kevin had moved the only outlet in the basement to the far corner, where reception was almost non-existent. My calls kept dropping. My texts wouldn't send. I didn't realize until later that Kevin had been jamming the signal somehow, or maybe he'd changed settings on my phone. All I knew was that reaching my son became harder and harder. When I did manage to get Marcus on the phone, I tried to tell him something was wrong. But Emily was always nearby, listening. And what could I say? I'm living in a basement? They're feeding me scraps? It sounded paranoid, even to me. "Dad, you sound tired," Marcus would say. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I would answer, because Emily was standing at the top of the stairs, watching me, just adjusting to the new place. The financial abuse escalated. Kevin canceled my credit cards, claiming they were security risks. He took control of my investment accounts, moved money around, made decisions without telling me. When I asked to see statements, he told me not to worry about it. "You're retired, Harold," he said. "Enjoy your golden years. Let me handle the boring stuff." By August, I had no idea how much money I had. $600,000 from the house, plus 4 months of pension deposits. It should have been nearly $630,000, but I had no access, no information, no control. Kevin had taken everything. The physical abuse started in September. I had climbed the stairs to use the kitchen. I was hungry, and no one had brought me food in 2 days. I just wanted to make a sandwich. Kevin found me there, standing at the counter, and his face twisted with rage. "What are you doing up here?" "I'm hungry," I said. "I just wanted something to eat." He grabbed my arm, hard enough to leave bruises, and shoved me toward the basement door. "You eat when we say you eat. You stay where we tell you to stay. Understand?" I fell on the stairs. My hip, still healing, screamed with pain. I lay there for hours before I could move again. After that, Kevin didn't bother hiding his contempt. He would come down to the basement just to mock me, to remind me of my place. "You know what your pension is worth, Harold," he said one night, standing over me with a beer in his hand. $6,000 a month. That's $72,000 a year. You could live another 20 years. That's almost $1.5 million. And it's all mine now. I tried to reason with him. That money is supposed to take care of me. Kevin laughed. "It is taking care of you. You've got a roof over your head, don't you? Food in your belly? You should be thanking me." Emily knew. She had to know. But she never intervened, never stood up for me, never once acknowledged what was happening. When I tried to talk to her alone, she would look away, mumble excuses, disappear upstairs. My own daughter had become a stranger. I thought about leaving. Every day, I thought about it. But where would I go? My apartment was gone. My money was gone. My phone barely worked. Kevin had isolated me so completely that escape seemed impossible. And there was something else. Something I'm not proud of. I didn't want to believe my daughter could do this to me. I kept hoping she would come to her senses, realize what was happening, save me. I was waiting for a rescue that would never come. At least, not from her. I started recording things. I had an old voice recorder that Patricia had given me years ago, before smartphones made such things obsolete. Kevin didn't know about it. He'd searched my belongings when I first moved in, taken anything he thought was valuable, but he'd missed this. It looked like junk, a battered piece of plastic with worn buttons. But it worked, and over the weeks that followed, I recorded everything. Kevin's threats, his mockery, the sounds of him throwing me downstairs, the days of silence when no one brought food. I recorded it all, hiding the device in my mattress between uses. I didn't know what I would do with the recordings. I just knew I needed evidence. I needed proof that I wasn't crazy, that this was really happening, that my son-in-law was systematically destroying me. October came, and with it, the early Alberta cold. The basement had no proper heating, just a small space heater that Kevin controlled from upstairs. He would turn it off at night, and I would lie shivering under blankets that weren't enough, feeling the cold seep into my bones. I got sick. A chest infection that turned into pneumonia. I coughed so hard I thought I would crack a rib. I asked Emily to take me to a doctor. She said she would, tomorrow, and tomorrow never came. It was during this time that Kevin made his biggest mistake. He thought I was too sick to understand, too weak to remember. But I heard everything. He was on the phone, talking to someone about investments. I heard him mention my name, my account numbers, amounts of money that made my heart stop. "Yeah, I've got full control," he said, laughing. "The old man doesn't even know. I've already moved 200,000 into the Cayman account. By the time anyone figures it out, it'll be untouchable." I pressed record on my device, capturing what I could. The walls were thick, but I got enough. Enough to know he wasn't just taking my pension. He was stealing my entire savings. I tried to call Marcus that night. My fingers were shaking, from cold or fear or both. The call connected, miracle of miracles, and I heard my son's voice. "Dad, is everything okay? You sound terrible." "Marcus," I whispered, "I need help. Please. Something's wrong." But then the call dropped. Whether Kevin was monitoring somehow, or whether it was just bad luck, I don't know. I tried to call back. Nothing. I tried to text. Failed. I sat in that basement and cried, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. What I didn't know was that Marcus had heard something in my voice, something that worried him enough to cancel his meetings, book a flight, and drive up from the Edmonton airport without telling anyone he was coming. The morning Marcus arrived was a Saturday in late October. I had been in that basement for 4 months. I had lost 30 pounds. I had bruises on my arms and legs that had faded and returned so many times I'd lost count. I'd given up hope. I heard the doorbell ring upstairs. Then voices, raised in surprise. Kevin's voice, falsely welcoming. Emily's voice, nervous. And then, like music, Marcus's voice, asking where I was. "He's resting," Kevin said. "The basement apartment. He likes it down there, more privacy." I heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, determined footsteps. And then the light from upstairs flooded down, and I saw my son's silhouette in the doorway. "Dad?" I couldn't answer. My throat was too tight with emotion. Marcus came down the stairs, and I watched his face change as his eyes adjusted to the dim light. He saw the mattress on the floor. He saw the single bare light bulb. He smelled the damp and the mildew and the despair. "Dad, what is this?" His voice was shaking. "Why are you down here? Where's your room?" I tried to sit up, and he saw me wince. He was at my side in an instant, helping me, and that's when he saw the bruises, the ones on my wrists where Kevin had grabbed me, the yellowing marks on my arms, the way I flinched at sudden movements. "Who did this to you?" Before I could answer, Kevin's voice echoed down the stairwell. Well, look who decided to show up." Marcus stood slowly. He was a big man, my son, taller than me, broader than Kevin. But more than that, he was good, genuinely good, in a way that Kevin could never understand. "What the hell is going on here?" Marcus asked, his voice quiet and dangerous. Kevin laughed, descending a few steps, but staying well above us. He was a coward, I realized. Even then, with all his power over me, he was afraid of a fair fight. "Your father's fine," Kevin said. "He prefers it down here. Don't you, Harold?" I found my voice then, weak as it was. "They took everything, Marcus. The pension, the savings, all of it." Kevin's face darkened. "Shut up, old man." Marcus moved toward the stairs. "What did you just say?" I said, "Shut up." Kevin's voice rose with false bravado. This doesn't concern you, Marcus. Your father signed power of attorney. Everything I've done is perfectly legal. He can't even make decisions for himself anymore. That's not how POA works, Marcus said, and I could hear his fury building. You don't get to steal someone's money. You don't get to keep them in a basement. You don't get to abuse an elderly man just because you have a piece of paper. Kevin sneered. What are you going to do about it? Marcus reached the top of the stairs. He was face to face with Kevin now, and I could see the fear in my son-in-law's eyes. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't planned for someone who would actually stand up to him. Marcus spoke slowly, deliberately. I'm going to take my father out of this house. I'm going to take him to a hospital. I'm going to document every bruise, every mark, every injury. And then I'm going to call the RCMP and tell them exactly what you've done. Kevin tried to block his path. You can't do that. I have power of attorney. I make the decisions. POA can be revoked, Marcus said, and it doesn't give you the right to commit fraud, theft, or elder abuse. Now get out of my way before I move you myself. I had never seen my son like this before. Marcus was always the quiet one, the gentle one, but in that moment, he was a force of nature. He was every good thing I had tried to teach him, standing up against every evil I had failed to protect myself from. Kevin made one last desperate move. He shoved Marcus, or tried to. It was like watching a child push against a wall. Marcus didn't even rock back on his heels. And then my son took off his watch. He set it carefully on the hallway table, and he looked Kevin straight in the eye. I could break your jaw right now, Marcus said, his voice eerily calm. I could throw you down these stairs and tell the police you fell. And part of me really, really wants to do that. Kevin went pale. But I'm not going to, Marcus continued. Because you're not worth the assault charge. And because my father has spent 4 months in your basement, and the best revenge isn't going to come from my fists. It's going to come from watching you lose everything you stole. He stepped around Kevin, who was frozen in place, and came back down to help me. Gently, carefully, he helped me up the stairs. Each step was agony, but I didn't care. My son had come. My son was saving me. Emily was waiting in the kitchen. She looked small, suddenly, diminished. Daddy, she started. Marcus turned on her. Don't. He wasn't shouting, but his voice cut like ice. Don't you dare speak to him. You let this happen. You watched your father being abused and did nothing. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that, and I know Dad won't. I looked at my daughter one last time. I wanted to see some sign of remorse, some indication that my little girl was still in there somewhere. But her eyes were empty. She had made her choice, and it wasn't me. Marcus helped me to his rental car. He had blankets in the back, bottles of water, protein bars. He had been prepared for something bad, but even he seemed shaken by what he'd found. We're going to the hospital first, he said as he drove. They need to document everything. Then, we're going to the police. The recorder, I said, my voice cracking. In my mattress, I have recordings. Marcus looked at me, then back at the road. He took a deep breath. Dad, he said, I'm so sorry. I should have come sooner. I should have known. I reached over and put my hand on his arm. You came! That's what matters. The hospital stay lasted a week. The doctors were appalled at my condition. Malnutrition, dehydration, pneumonia that had nearly become fatal, multiple contusions in various stages of healing. They documented everything with photographs, measurements, clinical precision. The RCMP took my statement on the 3rd day. 2 officers sat by my bedside, their faces grim as I told them everything. I gave them the voice recorder, and they listened to Kevin's threats, his mockery, his admission of hiding money in offshore accounts. This is serious, one officer said. This is fraud, elder abuse, possibly forcible confinement. We'll need to investigate, but based on what you've given us, charges are almost certain. I nodded. I was too tired to feel satisfaction, too broken to celebrate. Marcus handled everything. He hired a lawyer, an aggressive woman named Catherine, who specialized in elder abuse cases. She reviewed the power of attorney documents and shook her head. These wouldn't hold up anyway, she said. He coerced you into signing under false pretenses and using POA to steal from the principal is a criminal offense. He's looking at years in prison if we can prove what he did with the money. She could prove it. Kevin, for all his cunning, had been sloppy. He'd left a paper trail of transfers and withdrawals and suspicious investments. The offshore account he'd bragged about was found within weeks. The nearly $400,000 he'd stolen was frozen pending investigation. The arrest happened in November, just after Remembrance Day. I wasn't there to see it, but Marcus told me later. Kevin had been at work when the RCMP arrived. They walked him out in handcuffs in front of his colleagues, his clients, everyone who had ever seen him as a respectable businessman. He's been charged with fraud over $5,000, Marcus reported. Elder abuse, forcible confinement, and about 6 other things I can't even pronounce. The prosecutor says he's looking at 4 to 7 years. Emily wasn't charged, but she wasn't spared either. She tried to contact me once, a tearful phone call begging for forgiveness. Marcus answered and told her never to call again. I've thought about Emily a lot since then. I've wondered how my daughter became someone capable of watching her father starve in a basement. I've searched my memories for warning signs, for moments when I could have done something differently. But the truth is, some people make choices that have nothing to do with how they were raised. Emily chose Kevin. She chose money. She chose herself. I'm living in Vancouver now, in a small apartment near Marcus and his family. I have my pension back, deposited into an account that only I control. I have my savings, or most of them, returned after the frozen assets were seized. I have my voice recorder, empty now but still precious, a reminder of the darkest time of my life. My hip still aches when it rains. I still have nightmares about that basement, about Kevin's voice, about the cold and the hunger and the despair. Some wounds don't heal, even when the bruises fade, but I also have good days. Days when I walk along the seawall and feel the sun on my face. Days when Marcus comes over for dinner and we watch hockey together, cheering for the Canucks like we're kids again. Days when I remember that I survived. Kevin's trial is scheduled for next spring. I'll have to testify, to relive everything in front of lawyers and judges and strangers. I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm not afraid anymore either. I've already faced the worst thing that could happen to me. A courtroom is nothing compared to that basement. If you're listening to this story, if you're someone who has a parent growing older or a grandparent who seems more vulnerable, please pay attention to the warning signs. Watch for isolation. Watch for control. Watch for family members who seem too interested in finances, too quick to offer help that comes with strings attached. Power of attorney is supposed to protect us, but in the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon. And the people who wield it are often the people we trust most. I trusted my daughter. I trusted her husband, and they nearly killed me. But my son, my beautiful son, saved my life. He flew across the country on instinct. He stood up to a bully who had been tormenting me for months. He took off his watch and faced down evil, not with violence, but with the promise of justice. That's the story I want you to remember. Not the basement, not the bruises, not the stolen money, or the broken trust. Remember that somewhere out there, good people still exist. Sons who love their fathers. Strangers who care about the vulnerable. Police officers who take elder abuse seriously. Lawyers who fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Remember that darkness doesn't last forever. That help comes when you least expect it. That even in your lowest moment, lying on a cold mattress in a basement, feeling more alone than you've ever felt in your life, someone might be on their way. My son came for me. And because he did, I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'm still fighting. Kevin thought he could mock me forever. He thought he could take everything and never face consequences. He thought that because I was old and weak and dependent, I would never escape. He was wrong. My son arrived. And he did something that made him shut up. Not with violence, not with revenge, but with the one thing bullies fear most, the truth. So if you're watching this, and you're in a situation like mine, please know that there is hope. Reach out. Tell someone. Document everything you can. Don't let shame or fear or misplaced loyalty keep you silent. Your story matters. Your voice matters. You matter. And somewhere out there, someone is ready to fight for you. Someone is ready to stand in that doorway and say, enough. You just have to hold on until they arrive. Thank you for listening to my story. God bless you all. And please, please, take care of each other. The days are getting better now. Spring has come to Vancouver, and the cherry blossoms are blooming along the streets. Marcus brings his kids over every weekend, and they call me Grandpa Harold, and they have no idea what I went through last year. That's how it should be. Children shouldn't know about the darkness in the world. Not yet. Not while they're still innocent and full of wonder. But I know. I carry that knowledge with me every day, and I use it to remind myself how precious each moment is, how fortunate I am to be here, how close I came to losing everything. Kevin's trial begins in 3 weeks. I've reviewed my testimony with Catherine, gone over every detail, prepared myself for the cross-examination. Kevin has a lawyer, some slick guy from Toronto, who's going to try to make me look confused and unreliable. An old man whose memory can't be trusted. But I have the recordings. I have the medical records. I have Marcus, who will testify to what he found that day. And I have the truth, which is the most powerful weapon of all. Emily won't be in the courtroom. She's filed for divorce, apparently, and moved back to Calgary. I don't know what she's doing there, and I don't care. She made her choice. She chose the wrong side, and now she has to live with that. I don't hate my daughter. I want to, sometimes. When I wake up at 3 a.m, with the memory of that basement pressing down on me, when I feel the phantom ache of hunger in my stomach, when I catch myself flinching at loud noises, in those moments, hatred would be easy. But hatred takes energy. It takes attention. It takes up space in your heart that could be filled with better things. And I don't have time for it. Not anymore. What I have is gratitude. Overwhelming, impossible gratitude for the son who saved my life, for the healthcare workers who nursed me back to health, for the police officers who took my case seriously, for Catherine, who fights for me like she's fighting for her own father, and gratitude for you, for listening, for caring, for being the kind of person who watches a story about an old man in a basement and feels something. We're all connected, you know. That's something I've learned in these past months. Strangers become friends. Victims become advocates. The powerless find power they never knew they had. I'm not the same man I was before Kevin. I'm stronger in some ways, weaker in others. I trust less easily. I look at family members differently. I pay attention to the small cruelties that hide behind kind words and helpful offers. But I'm also more grateful, more present, more aware of the simple blessings that surround us every day. A warm meal, a soft bed, a phone call with someone who loves you. These things matter. They matter more than money, more than security, more than all the things Kevin tried to steal from me. Because in the end, what saved me wasn't my pension or my savings. It was love, pure, stubborn, unconditional love. Marcus loved me enough to get on a plane, to walk into that house uninvited, to face down a man who had terrorized his father for months. That's what I hold on to now, in the quiet moments, not the darkness, not the fear, but the light that broke through when I needed it most. Kevin is going to prison, I'm sure of it. And when the verdict comes down, when he hears the number of years he'll spend behind bars, I hope he thinks about that basement. I hope he thinks about the cold concrete and the thin mattress and the sound of his own voice mocking an old man who just wanted to be loved. I hope he understands, finally, that karma is real, that the universe keeps score, that you can't build a life on cruelty and expect it to last. But mostly, I hope his story serves as a warning to every son-in-law who thinks he can get away with it, to every daughter who turns a blind eye, to every predator who targets the elderly because they think we won't fight back. We will fight back. Maybe not with fists, maybe not with violence, but with truth, with evidence, with good people who stand up when others stand down. My son took off his watch that day. It was a symbolic gesture, a warning that he was ready to do whatever it took, but he didn't have to throw a single punch. The law threw them all for him. So here I am, 68 years old. living in a nice apartment with a view of the mountains, eating 3 meals a day, sleeping in a warm bed, calling my son whenever I want, without fear, without surveillance, without permission. Free. It's a simple word, but it means everything to me now. Freedom from Kevin, freedom from fear, freedom to live out my remaining years on my own terms, surrounded by people who actually love me. Patricia would be proud, I think. She always told me I was stronger than I knew. I never believed her until now. The cherry blossoms are falling outside my window, soft pink petals, drifting down like snow. There's a metaphor in there somewhere, about beauty emerging from harsh seasons, about patience rewarding those who endure. But I'm too old for metaphors now. I'm too tired for poetry. All I know is that I'm alive, and I'm grateful, and tomorrow is another day. Kevin used to mock me. He used to stand over me in that basement and tell me my pension belonged to him. He used to laugh at my weakness, my dependence, my fear. He's not laughing anymore. My son arrived, and he did something that made him shut up forever. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe to Shattered Vengeance for more true stories of justice and redemption. Take care of each other out there. And remember, it's never too late to ask for help. God bless.